Lincoln Riley did not mince words when talking about Spencer Rattler and Tanner Mordecai and who will be the starting quarterback for Oklahoma in 2020. Look, I understand if you believe that Tanner Mordecai has a shot, but I also think that there were some things that were revealing about what Lincoln Riley had to say about the quarterback position and the quarterback battle as it stands at Oklahoma right now. One of those was, hey, look, I expect both of those guys to be in a great position to lead the team this year. He thinks both of them are capable of being the starting quarterback in 2020. I'm not so certain of that, and I think that Riley kind of hit on something that we're all going to pick up on, which is that he feels a lot like this is Kyler and Austin Kendall in 2018. Now, in saying that, what he was trying to stress was they're inexperienced, but they're experienced here, meaning they know his system, they know the program, they know the team, they have the trust of members of the team, and now they get to battle it out in earnest, in public, to see who can be the one to start against Missouri State when the season begins. However, we all knew then, when Kyler Murray and Austin Kendall was playing at Oklahoma, that Kyler Murray was going to be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma. So much so that I felt like at some point somebody needed to encourage Austin Kendall to just have his own sense of belief that he could do the job. And even after Murray was drafted in the top 10, like number 9 overall in the Major League Baseball draft to the Oakland A's, still felt like Kyler Murray wanted to play football. He was going to play football. And it was touch and go there as to whether or not the Athletics were going to let him play football. But apparently, he was only going to sign if they were going to let him play football. And they wanted him to play football, and nobody expected him to go win the Heisman Trophy. But that's what he did, and then number 1 overall pick, and you know how that goes. But in the middle of that, you also saw Austin Kendall kind of just get a raw deal. One, because he was recruited over the top of when they signed Kyler Murray to a financial aid agreement. Okay, that's part of business, and you understand that. But also, when Kyler was made to sit out the first series against Baylor that year, and Austin Kendall got the start, his mom thought that he was really getting the start. She tweeted about it, talking about her baby's finally going to get his just due. He got the hook, and his mom locked his Twitter account. We know going into the next season, he brought in Jalen Hurts to recruit over the top of him, and he said, enough is enough. I'm going to West Virginia. Now this year, Riley feels so good about Rattler, I believe, and Mordecai to a degree, that they received some interest from grad transfers, and he said, no, don't want it. Sorry. I feel good about the guys that I have, which is another way of saying I feel good about my 5-star quarterback 2019 class, Spencer Rattler. So much is on this kiddo who's 6'1", about $190, $195. Mordecai's 6'2", pushing about 2 bills. They're both dual threat quarterbacks in that they can move around, but in Mordecai, you had a guy that had about 5,000 yards passing over his career, about 1,500 yards rushing, was able to take a Waco Midway team that has not been traditionally a juggernaut, take them all the way to a 6A2 state championship final. But in Rattler, you have a Mahomes, Baker Mayfield kind of figure. You have a guy with tremendous swagger, tremendous self-confidence, the Arizona State passing record with only like 4 games played as a senior. He was really highly regarded, but also very early in to Oklahoma, and he never wavered, which you have to appreciate about him if nothing else. He wanted to be at OU, he wanted to play for Lincoln Riley, and now he's going to have this opportunity to do that. What I find more interesting is how many people actually want him to win the job. So much so that when it was put to Riley that if you knew who the starter was going to be coming out of spring, would you name him? And he said, sure, why not? If you know a guy that is head and shoulders above the other quarterbacks or the guys in competition, don't see a reason as to hold it back because there are advantages to that. Everybody gets to rally behind that guy. We know who gets the first team reps going into the preseason camp. We don't have to split reps. We can make sure that we get some chemistry going with our offensive line and with our wide receivers. And we all will really benefit from having our guy be the guy and get into that default leadership position. Whether or not Rattler is voted a captain or not, he would be the quarterback. Same thing goes for Tanner Mordecai. If somehow he can surprise the hell out of all of us and pull like an OKC 2019-20 season where just gloriously overperforms expectations and wins the job and becomes a great quarterback, cool, great. But I kind of think that if Rattler isn't the guy, then OU's kind of screwed in 2020. I really believe that. I don't really think that Mordecai gives you the opportunities to win a championship the way that Rattler does. And you got to know that, right? I'm not actually trying to poo-poo Tanner Mordecai so much as I'm saying seen enough Rattler to know that that's got to be the guy and that you didn't bring him in if you didn't think he was the guy. But I could also see your argument in that, hey, if they felt that they did not have a capable number 2 RJ, wouldn't they bring in a grad transfer? To which, sure. But then look at the grad transfer market. Who did you want that was going to grad transfer? De'Aaron King? Maybe, but he ain't going to come there to back anybody up. He's coming there to be the starting quarterback. Would you want Chase Bryce? Probably not. There's a reason why he ended up at Duke. And we look at the transfer market and the portal, and it wasn't as robust as you thought it might be. I mean, the guy that everybody wanted out of it is at Miami now. And I'm not so certain that he would have been a great fit over the top of Rattler at Oklahoma. Would he be a capable number 2? Absolutely. But again, he's not going to show up to be that guy. Same thing with Felipe Franks at Florida. You wouldn't want him to start over Spencer Rattler, but would you want him as a backup? Sure. Especially if he wanted to be comfortable in that role. But I don't think that he wanted to be comfortable in that role. I'm more concerned about the offensive line than I am with the quarterbacks. Because from hearing Riley talk about the offensive line, I agree with him. It's not that they were bad by any stretch, but they weren't good either. Joe Moore Award semifinals, sure. But it was clear that R.J. Proctor wanted to play guard, and then they moved him to left tackle because they weren't sure what Eric Swinson was going to be able to do. And then R.J. Proctor started the last 4 games of the season. That's how good Eric Swinson was. Now you're talking about Stacey Wilkins or Bray Walker really trying to push for that left tackle spot, and then Riley went ahead and just said it. There's a lot of guys that are probably going to move around positions because that offensive line needs work. Like they said, it wasn't up to their standards. I think they might be screwed at offensive line, kind of like at defensive back if they're not healthy. You just don't have the experience and the horses like you had in the past. However, you do return 3 starters, but are those starters going to play the same positions? We'll see, man. I mean, if Adrian Ely moves to left tackle, great. Right? Bray Walker is the right tackle, great. I just think that if they're really being honest, and it sounds like they are, you could have some work here. Because Stacey Wilkins will have had to put on a ton of weight for me to believe that he's going to be the left tackle. And maybe he has. Nobody's seen him, right? We haven't seen him practice, and we won't see him until the spring game. And maybe he's the answer at one of those tackle positions and can provide you some cover if nothing else. But Creed definitely needs to be better because we were talking about him leading into last season as a guy that's going to get drafted in the first round as an interior lineman, and he just wasn't that guy last year. Now he gets to go through the spring, didn't get to go through it last year, and he is far and away the leader on that offensive line, and he's going to have to start acting like it in a very real way while also getting help from guys like Adrian Ely and, of course, Eric Swinson. But I'm not sold on what this OU team can be in 2020. Like many, I believe that the 21 season is the one for Oklahoma to go and try to win it all, and this season is try to figure out what you got and load up for the next year, especially knowing that Theo Howard is out with injury, right? We didn't even hear Riley talk about Obi Obialo, right? We talked about him knowing that the injuries are still out there. There are guys that are going to be limited in spring practice, among them Rattler and Tanner Mordecai, Nick Bonito, and he's going to make some positional changes to linebacker with Jamal Morris and Robert Barnes, whose soul is still on the 5-yard line at the Orange Bowl. But we'll see how that goes, and I'm going to do another segment on that at some point. But today I just wanted to talk about him actually candidly saying they're both in it. He believes they both can start, and if one is better than the other, he'll name him at the end of the spring, which is another way of saying he probably won't do it. I don't think that Rattler is so far and away better than Tanner Mordecai that he's going to get named the starting quarterback in the spring, because I don't think Tanner Mordecai is grossly bad. And I think that's what it would have to be for Riley to go ahead and name Rattler. He would have to see things on the field and off the field that would lead him to believe that there's nobody else in this race but Rattler, and it behooves Riley, whether he wants to admit it or not, to take this all the way to August. Not just because of the portal, because we forget, you can take people into the portal anytime you want. They can go in there. They can go in there right now. It's fine. It'd be okay. But to think that you're going to keep him on a leash by making him believe that he's going to be the starter if he doesn't believe he's going to be the starter at some point or has an opportunity to be the starter is flawed. It's just the way that all this works. Now, if I'm Mordecai, I stay put because if something happens to Rattler, I'm next up and I get an opportunity to shut people up like RJ. That said, you really need Rattler to show that he is the guy that Lincoln Riley recruited, and you need him to show it right away and continue to show it all the way through next year to try to get you back to that Big 12 championship and give you an opportunity to win a college football playoff semifinal. But right now, work out who the linebackers are, work out how the secondary is going to look out, work out how the offensive line is going to work, and then make sure that Theo Weiss and Jaden Hazelwood are ready to go opposite Charleston Rambo, because you still have those suspensions that you're working through, of which Trajan Bridges is one. So there's lots of things to unpack here and lots of problems to be solved, but they are not insurmountable. And that's really the lining here. They can all coach through this and be great. I'm just not so certain that you can coach all the way through all of these problems, because one way or another, something always comes up.